Now I'm going to start recording. Okay.
Okay, so can we get started? Okay, I will call this special district board meeting to order. As Todd just explained, I'm going to be presiding over today's meeting as Anne has had some health issues and she's hoping to join us in about 30 minutes, but I'm going to get us started. I'd like to welcome everyone who's present today for today's meeting. And do we have any public? Do you see any public, Todd, the public comment?
No, we do not have anybody. We did set up a location here. Nobody has shown up for that. And oh, just a second.
Hi, sorry, this is Brenna Visser. I didn't realize this was going to be completely virtual today.
Oh.
So I showed up to the office. So
No, that's great.
From the bulletin is the only person in here. There's no other members of the public, so you can keep this stream going for the executive session.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't need to make the public comments, read that message?
No, it looks like we do not have any public comments.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, well, at this point in time, we're going to be discussing the governance process policies to discuss the central library land. So I'm going to turn this over to, oh, do I need to read? Oh, I need to leave the executive. I need to leave this section and go
Sure.
into executive, right?
And let me read it for you.
Okay.
The Deschutes Public Library District will conduct an executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions as pursuant to ORS 192.6602E.
All right, so I move that I guess I make a motion, I don't know, that we leave the executive session and return to our regular public session.
Okay, and welcome to regular session. I'm going to, for board members, we have a proposed motion that I will send out, and let me admit everybody that's waiting.
Okay, would anybody like to make a motion about the letter of intent?
I will. I move that the Deschutes Public Library District Board direct the library director to execute the letter of intent, execute the purchase sale agreement, and place $200,000 earnest money in escrow based on an overall price of $10,250,000 for property located at the northwest corner of 27th Street and Wilderness Way, Bend, Oregon, with the understanding that the district has 90 days from the purchase sale agreement effective date to conduct due diligence as outlined in the real estate agreement documents.
And just to correct, that's the northeast corner.
Did I say that wrong? North,
Yeah.
oh, sorry. Correction, northeast corner of 27th Street.
And you want to enter the size of the property?
No,
It's not in
I
there.
don't
No?
necessarily think that would be part of this.
I don't remember.
I'd like to second the motion.
Okay, and Malkin has seconded it. Is there any discussion about the motion?
Oh, yes. I question, you just made a motion to spend $2.25 million on a piece of property of unspecified size at a specified location. I think that's not an appropriate motion to make.
And we can add in the acreage.
Yes.
Yeah, let's just put in the acreage in there. So can we do that?
Yeah, and Dan, maybe you can help us out with the acreage amount.
Oh,
Yeah, 9.37 acres.
9.37.
Okay, so can Bunny
Yeah.
just amend her motion and
Or should
include
I-
that?
Well,
Make that motion once again?
can I add something to that? So you have the acreage. There is a lot description for that Greg has, isn't there?
No, there isn't. That's why it's described as the northeast corner of 27th Street and Wilderness Way. And that's exactly how it's done in the LOI. And so I would add in the 9.37 acres, probably after the word for and before property. So where it says 10,250,000 for 9.37 acres of property located at the northeast corner.
Right.
And that all ties into the LOI agreement.
Okay.
So what do we need to do, Todd? Should I just call for a motion again and have Bunny repeat the whole thing again?
Or rescind that first motion and make
Yeah.
another motion.
Okay, that
Let's
sounds
just do
good.
that to be clear, clean. And I just resent that.
Okay.
Okay,
I will rescind my first motion to be corrected with the second motion. I move that the Deschutes Public Library District Board direct the library director to execute the letter of intent, execute the purchase sale agreement, and place $200,000 earnest money in escrow based on an overall sale price of $10,250,000 for 9.37 acres of property located at the northeast corner of 27th Street and Wilderness Way, Bend, Oregon, with the understanding that the district has 90 days from the purchase sale agreement effective date to conduct due diligence as outlined in the real estate agreement documents.
do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
And Malcolm seconded it. Do we have any more discussion?
Yes. I have a concern that we already know that the size of the building will be impacted. It will be smaller. I feel like we should actually go and, if we're going to look at and pay for architectural conceptual designs as to what we're going to be doing, we need to really look and say, well, what is the size we're looking at? And how does that impact the services? Now, the letter of intent says, yes, the out is you have 90 days to get out of it for whatever reason. That's according to Greg and Dan. But I think as a board, we ought to be discussing this before we make any commitments to any property owner and to the general public, committing funds, potential commitment of funds, purchase of funds, use of funds, before we go into this process. I think, a letter of intent is all well and good. It's the right thing to do. But I think we ought to be looking at the impact of the budget on the construction, on the services that we can provide, on the size of the building, before we proceed with doing any more of this.
Anybody like to make a comment about what Ray just said?
I
Well,
disagree totally.
Do you want,
Why?
Denny, can you say why you're in opposition to what Ray just said?
That continues everything on. That is what due diligence is. I don't want to go out to our designers, spend the money to look at what size the new central library is until we at least have some intent on a piece of property to build it on.
Anyone else have a comment about what Ray just said?
Yeah, I'd like to comment. I agree with Bunny. And I think that the architects have taken a look at this piece of property and have indicated that this is something that they can work with. And I think that's part of our work as the board to discuss those issues during this due diligence period. But without a specific site in mind, that's just more money down the drain. So I think that having a specific site among the extremely limited choices that we had for this property makes sense, and we have 90 days to have those discussions as a board, and the architects also have time to work on that.
I agree with what.
So that's what due diligence is.
Okay, and Ness, you want to weigh in on what Ray said?
Yeah, I do like this piece of property on the east side. I think it provides the library system great access. I too am curious about the impact of the budget on what the size and scope of this building will be. So that is always on the back of my mind. What is this, what is the central library actually going to encompass? But so I think that's going to be part of our discussions moving forward. Every meeting is just, how this is all going to be coming together. So I do like that piece of property, but there again, it's just, what is the impact of this on the coming budget and what that building's going to look like?
And I agree with what Bunny and Ann, Ness and Ann Malcolm said, and Ray, you bring up excellent issues that I totally agree with. They are issues we need to discuss, but my feeling is they're discussions that we need to discuss once we have the piece of property, but they are very important questions that we do need to discuss and talk about. So with that, we have a motion and we have a second. Do we want to bring it to a vote?
I have one other question, concern. That the size of the property is predicated on the size of the building. If we've already saying the size of the building can be decreased, how far can it be decreased and still have the service that we require? What is the minimum that we're looking at? Because that will decrease the cost and size of the property, saving us money that we can actually put more into the facilities themselves. Isn't that a discussion that we want to have? Wouldn't we want to have that discussion before we commit to a large piece of property for $10.25 million?
I personally think that's a question that we most definitely can have a discussion with after we send out our letter of intent. That's my personal feeling. I don't know how other people feel.
I agree. There'll be a lot of discussions. What Ray has said and beyond that, we will have many discussions on this. A letter of intent is exactly that, an intent to do something. It is not committing us, but we have a piece of property that is somewhat secured so that we can hire or give a charge to our designers and engineers to start looking at this property without having nothing to put the building on.
And Malcolm, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that we did look at properties of various sizes, all the way down to 5 acres. And this property rose to the top consistently as far as location and ability to serve. So with that, I'd like to call the question.
Okay.
Call for a vote.
Okay, so we're ready to vote. So all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, so the motion passes. We have 4 in favor and 1 opposed. Thank you very much. We got a vote. So Todd, I'm going to turn it over to you. I don't know.
Yeah,
what we
just
do next.
say the last thing you have is, as we discussed at our work session, that we discussed critical communication. I'm assuming this is something we definitely want to communicate to our public. And this might be a good chance, as Ann Malkin pointed out, yes, our PR team can help out with this, but it'd also be helpful for board members, maybe just to say a little bit about why you are enthusiastic about this property as we move forward.
Yeah, so let's go around and just say what it is that we feel, why we feel this is a good property. And Ness, I'm going to start with you, and you had a couple of good statements earlier on.
Yes, I voted in favor of this based on several things. One is I do like the location of this particular property. I think it provides great access, and it's also an area of great growth in Bend. What's nice about this property too is that the developer will be providing a lot of that infrastructure that was missing in the Robo Road site. So that will really provide us with a little more flexibility in what our designs are looking forward. I just want to make sure the public knows that our priority is to provide the maximum amount of services and to our public, to make sure that our programs are really the focus of all our libraries, but particularly in the Central Library. So if we're looking at the need to relook at budgets and relook at allocations, that we will maintain the quality of our programs and services over the size and design of a new building.
Thank you, Ann. How about you, Bunny? Anything you can state about why you like this piece of property?
I do like this piece of property. I think that the public will be able to access this property easily. Bend is growing that way. I do feel like that we have done our job as board members to, as well as we can, secure property that we've looked at and go forth with our spending money to do the due diligence. And so I want the public to know that we looked at this property amongst many others. We chose this property, and we will look at many other potential problems that could come up with this, but we do have a piece of land somewhat secured with a letter of intent.
Thank you. Ann Malkin, can you state why you voted in favor of this property?
Well, I think this is a good location. Originally, when we started the original property search, we were looking for land on the east side. And this property and many other properties were not available at that time. So at that time, we made the best choice from the land that was available. And this time, I think we did exactly the same thing. We had an extensive list of criteria that we used and scored the properties on. And I think that this one consistently came to the top. It's near a large and growing residential areas. And I think it will allow easy access for the public and for transport of materials throughout the district, which is really important because it's a centralized processing hub for all of our libraries. So it will strengthen our service to all branches. I think we do have a lot of questions yet to answer about this property, but I think it is the best choice available. And I feel really satisfied that we did a thorough search of all areas in Bend, and that this property makes the most sense.
Thank you, Ann. Ray, would you like to address why you voted in opposition to this vote?
Yeah,
property?
I think this is an excellent location. I have no problem with that. I agree with Ann Ness. It has everything that you would a buyer would want to have. Concessions from the seller in terms of systems developments, everything else, location. It's terrific. It has been one of my first choices all along, this east side of Bend. So I like the location very, very much. My concern is that I feel like we're in a circular reasoning or argument that the size of the property is based upon the size of the building. But the size of the building is dictating the size of the property. And so it all comes back down to the size of the building. If we can already reduce the size of the building, and I don't know by how much, because the property and the total costs will increase dramatically here, then what is that real size? I think as a library board member, I need to know that before I make a decision using the public's money or committing the public's money to anything we're doing. I don't think that's part of our due diligence. I think that's part of our deliberations prior to going into all of this construction and going into the property purchases. That's been my concern. My concern is, yes, we will have a lot of discussions after this letter of intent goes out and during due diligence. But are we already set in our own minds that we are going to build as much as possible a 100,000 square foot building and use all of the property that we can? And that's already set in our minds. Or are we going to sit back and say, wait, we know we can decrease the size if we can and still provide services. We should really discuss again, what is the size of the library that we really need to have? Can we save more money, not only on the construction, but on the property size that we could then use for other purposes, other buildings, Redmond and all the other libraries, which we're allowed to do with a bond. So that's my concern. Going forward with the LOI, I think I'm hearing from at least the majority of the board that it's a formality. And I hate to think that's what it's going to be.
Okay, thank you, Ray. I appreciate that. I agree with a lot of the statements that have been made so far as to why I voted for this piece of property. I like the location a lot. I know we don't know yet for a fact that the bus line is going to be able to stop there, but I'm going to be really surprised if CET does not decide that that would be a good location. When we were driving there, it's going to be very easy for people from all over the county to access that piece of property. That's one of the things I like. I also like the fact that bike lanes are in there. There's going to be large segment of homes in the area. So a lot of people are going to be able to walk to the library. They're going to be able to bike to that library. I like this possibility. I know at this time we don't know if we're going to be able to do anything with the extra piece of property, but I like the idea of the potential of partnering with, and I can think of many different organizations that would benefit from being close to the library, that would benefit for all those people who live within that part of the community. So I like the potential of that. And I agree with you, Ray. It's so important that we make sure that the public knows that we're spending their money appropriately. And I think that our 90 days is up to us to have those conversations. You're right. I agree with both you and Ann. I want to make sure that we maintain all of our services that we provide. I also think we need to look at the size of the library, as Greg has talked to us in the past. That is going to be something we are going to have to talk about. It's not automatically the same size library that we were originally looking at. And so we're going to be looking at a different size. Todd, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you. I think that was great. I think we have accomplished everything we need to accomplish for this meeting. So thank you.
Okay. So I call adjourn this meeting then.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.